but pretty industry standard stuff here.
Yeah. They also see a couple copies of Gore Clan Rampager as well. So same game plan, obviously, of put gigantic monsters into play, have some removal. And you actually see a copy of Rakdos' Return in his hand as well. He's got one of those main deck. As Threet is going to start off with a Temple of Abandon. Gray started off with a Temple of Deceit. And we are underway here in round number 6 of 10 in Atlanta.
So what's your take on this matchup against Jund Monsters, kind of your baby? How do you feel against Blue, White, and Esper?
You are a dog game 1. A lot of your cards just die, honestly. The blue-white control decks don't really care about a card like Pulachronos and some of your other big dummies. They, of course, care quite a bit about Stormbreath Dragon, but you're a pretty big dog game 1 when you have Mortars to draw and Caryatids, Elvish Mystics, Pulachronos that's just going to die. You get much better up to sideboard when you can board in Rakdos' Return, Sire of Insanity, Rurik Thar, Golgari Charm, Abrupt Decay. A lot of the black cards, and part of the reason that the Black Splash was incorporated was to actually have a better matchup against blue-white, because I didn't feel like red-green was great against it. I thought it was perfectly fine, but I thought that blue-white is going to start gearing towards beating Planeswalkers with a card like Fated Retribution.
Sure.
So I want to take the spells approach as opposed to the Planeswalkers approach with Chandra and Xenagos. But, I mean, all that being said, I still think that game 1 is not great for you. Gray's going to play a Plains here, so kind of revealing exactly what he's up to.
Tannon with Dissolve in hand, so debating about whether he wants to add something to the board or hold up Dissolve mana, and decides to sit on his counterspell.
I know something that players at home are always curious about. All right, blue-white control, what are the win conditions that go around outside of Sphinx's Revelation? 1 Aetherling and 2 copies of Elspeth in the main deck here for Grace, and you're actually not going to find the Elixir of Immortality throughout this list, taking a more traditional approach. As there is Pulachronos, that will be taken care of via Dissolve. And Grace's going to take a look. That's a pretty loud signal that there's no Supreme Verdict hanging out over there.
Or just Tannon's not willing to tap out just yet.
Yeah, that's fair.
Another factor, too. He has a lot of counters in his hand, You see decks like Green-Red Monsters and Jund Monsters try to set up boards where they say, okay, I'm okay with getting hit by Supreme Verdict because I'm going to get to untap and resolve a Planeswalker. So I used to be on board with you with that play. That it definitely meant no Supreme Verdict. Now watching these games, I feel a little bit differently. Sometimes it could just be more counterspells in hand and an unwillingness to tap out.
Could also be a thing, too, where Tannon maybe needed to land as he's going to play Jace.
He also may be without second white. That's another factor.
Yeah. He's going to take it up to 5 and pass that turn back. Pretty juicy Dreadboard target here for Threet. But he does have a Dreadboard in his hand. Able to, take care of Jace. And doesn't actually do anything. Is a bonus.
And that's a big difference between Green-Red Monsters and Jund Monsters is Dreadboard is a great answer to Jace. Green-Red Monsters on the stable board actually struggles answering Jace in my mind.
Yeah. Stomper going to come and play untapped here. So Jason going to go down to 18. Or 16, excuse me. Might see a dragon here? We're going to see a Rakdos' Return for 3. And 3 of that damage is going to go over to Jace, and now Tannon and Grace are going to have to discard 3 cards.
And this is an unexpected game 1 card.
Yes.
But we are starting to see it pick up a little bbit in popularity. Tom Ross, 5-0, in an off-camera feature match, also playing with main deck Rakdos Return this weekend.
Tom Ross is killing.
Yes.
He is killing it right now. You see Jason's going to go down to 2. Rakdos Return is going to resolve. Grace discards a last breath among those 3 cards. Looks like 2 lands, Immutable Vault, and Hallowed Fountain as well. So the second white source, he was maybe sandbagging, but it's gone now. So what he wants to do with Jason, he wants to cash it in.
Supreme Verdict in hand, no second white mana.
Yep, he's going to cash that in. So let's take a look at 3 cards, shall we? Supreme Verdict, Dissolve, and a Jace. Wow, that's going to be tough to split, actually. Whew.
Yeah, those are 3 big cards, obviously.
Does Tannon already have a verdict in his hand? Yes, no.
I feel like you can't give him Jace plus one of these cards. As ugly as it is to split Dissolve Supreme Verdict, that Jace plus one of these powerful cards is just too much.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he just gobbles up the pile that does have Jace plus card in it if that's the split.
I think Tannon almost certainly takes the 2-card pile no matter which one it is.
Sure. And that's exactly what he does. Gobbles up Jace and Dissolve very, very quickly. There's a Immutable Vault. Let's see if he's going to play Jace here. Can also leave up the Dissolve, which is very obvious, but given that Threet has nothing on the board, really, leaving up Dissolve is actually pretty powerful, but he's going to go with the Architect of Thought. Going to take it up to 5 and kick it back over to Threet, who will untap those 5 permanents, take a draw, and we'll see what he wants to do in his first main phase.
There's a lot of pressure on Threet to have a good turn right now because if Tannon gets to untap with this Jason in play and dissolve in hand, he can really start leveraging his resources. This will also be a fine turn for Dreadbore.
Yeah, not a bad one, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Going to use that Rakdos Sorcery to take care of Jace. Looks like he's got a Domri as well.
This is a really solid turn for Jason.
You said it had to be a good one. It looks like it is. So Domri going to start at 3. Probably going to see this tick up here after Temple of Malice and the Scry to resolve. Now, it's kind of interesting here, as top card's going to go to the bottom here for 3. Domri's going to tick up because those 2 Mutavaults can go after that Domri, but that would be basically Grace's whole turn.
It's also shields down, you know?
Yeah. Grace draws his card. Got 3 cards in hand right now. Yep, Mutavaults are going to take down that Domri. See if Grace has a land to play. He does, an island, pass it back. Dissolve and a mystery card over there for Tannon. And Threet going to take a draw.
Threet looks very mana heavy right now.
Yeah, 4 mana here. Let's pull a Chronos, which Grace says, that's fine. Doesn't really matter too much to me. Elvish Mystic, are you coming? You are. In for 1. Grace going to go down to 19.
But Tannon's hand is not very good from here. He's missing double white for the Supreme Verdict in hand, and Dissolve doesn't necessarily do anything as Threet can realistically win with what he has on the board. Tannon has a lot of great draws, of course, but Polychronos is normally not very good against blue-white control decks, as we've known multiple times, but this is one of the spots where it's a pretty good clock.
Yeah, funny to say a 5/5 for 4 that can come down on turn 3 isn't good against a control deck, but that's actually the case. It just dies to basically everything. Azorius Charm putting it on top is pretty brutal too. But Lucanos will come across here for 5. Gonna knock Grace down to it looks like 14. Blood Crypt gonna come into play tapped here for 3. Just pass the turn back. No revelation there from Grace. Looks like that may be what he just drew this turn though.
And that's that's a great draw for Tannon.
You know, he's repping this Dissolve so hard, Threet knows that he has it, so Grace can, you know, just sit here and say the next spell you play is going to be countered no matter what, and then it allows him the opportunity to resolve Revelation.
And it's realistic here that, you know, Threet might not even cast spells in his hand because having them get countered and allowing Tannon to scry here is so bad that he could be pumping the brakes with real spells in his hand. Trying to demand that Tannon answer this Polychronos before he does anything else, and that opens the door for Tannon to resolve a Revelations.
Which he takes the opportunity to do. So 3 cards coming. Let's add a 4th one for the draw. Let's see what he's able to do. There's a Hollow Fountain untapped. It's going to put him down to 10, and he gets to do what is one of the better plays for him this turn, which is to resolve a Supreme Verdict while leaving Dissolve up.
Yeah, this is as good as it gets for 7 mana here. He even has Mutavaults in play where he can start threatening Jason's life total pretty quickly here, too. So Jason does not have a lot of time.
Jason needs some sort of threat that's worth countering now, too. You know, as you mentioned, he may have been doing something along the lines of sandbagging a card like Stormbreath Dragon. Yeah. Don't want to run it to Dissolve, make him counter something else. Well, it's going to get countered now. And there's just a pretty harmless Sylvan Caryatid there for Threet.
And Tannon has also found his main deck copy of Doomblade as well, so a lot of tools to work with here.
And after Threet just plays a Swamp, we pass it back over to Grace. Grace is going to play an Island for his turn. He's got 8 mana in play, and he's working towards getting in the late game, which is the place he wants to be. Threet wants to avoid getting in that situation, but it's hard to do for green-red monsters, or Jund monsters in game number 1. Here's a 3 mana spell in Courser of Crewfix.
Yeah, and you're seeing some of the problems with the matchup. It's not that green-red monsters or Jund don't have sources of card advantage. You see Domri and Courser and all these cards that, you know, allow it to generate card advantage and purportedly slog through a card like Supreme Verdict. You still have to win the game in time before Sphinx's Revelation becomes a thing, and it's very challenging to be able to beat both of those cards.
Courser reveals Sylvan Caryatid, just passing the turn back, so Grace basically saying, you know, I don't really care about that card. As he plays a Temple of Silence, going to look at his hand, figure out where he wants to put the top card of his deck. And he says the bottom is where it's going to go. just one card in Threet's hand. As you mentioned multiple times, you know, what makes things really tough here is that Threet is giving away free information with the Courser. Grace knows that, okay, I don't have to worry about anything crazy happening next turn. So I can take time to cast the Supreme Verdict, know that your top deck is going to be a Sylvan Caryatid, and I don't think that card in your hand is very good, and if it is, I'll just dissolve it.
Yeah. Tannon also you can see that he also has a Syncopate and a Revelation in hand, so he's in a really commanding position.
There's Sylvan Caryatid, pass the turn back. So Grace will untap that massive lands, take a draw. There's an island, pass the turn back. This is going to be a mighty large Revelation. It's going to be for 7. There is a copy of Domri. Might be worth countering. Depends on what Grace thinks. I mean, Grace hasn't drawn an Attention Sphere yet this game. So, you know, he might think along the lines of, you know what? I can just draw into an Attention Sphere to take care of that. Not a big deal.
Yeah, he might rev for some amount first to see if he finds an answer for the Domri. Ideally, he would like to sit on his counterspell and save it for something very specific. So I think what's most likely to happen here is he'll rev for some amount, looking for a different answer. Maybe he'll counterspell it otherwise.
Yeah, it just feels, this looked like a Syncopate turn to me.
Okay, that's also reasonable.
And he's making sure that he has the amount of mana necessary with 5 untapped lands and the 6th one from the Caryatid. Syncopate for 7 will get the job done. Threet just with 1 card left in his hand. Doesn't feel like a great one, as Grace says. Yeah, just in case, you know, that Domri, even though it is foil and beautiful, is exiled, not put in the graveyard via Syncopate. So Grace, still trying to resolve that Revelation, just passes the turn back, still with Dissolve in the grip. Threet will take a draw. See if he has a spell to play. 3 mana. There's a Courser. I think Grace is probably fine with that one resolving. And he is. Stormbreath Dragon on the top of the deck. Now he's playing with basically perfect information about what's going on, knowing that, okay, Dragon's coming and those are the creatures you have in play. Let's rev for a whole bunch.
Yeah, and this feels like the knockout punch here with Tannon having that many counters in his hand.
You're saying a Revelation for 7 will probably spell the game?
Yes, in this particular spot.
That's bold commentary.
Not all the time, but right here.
So after the draw, first turn, Grace does have 8 cards, and 8 new cards, excuse me, as he just play an island for the turn. Couple of Attention Spheres he slides by there. Not sure if he has another copy of Supreme Verdict or not.
He's in the interesting, we see that sometimes the blue-white control position of my hand's too good to cast anything.
It's a rough life.
Yeah.
You see, he puts a Doom. My goodness, his hand is good. He's got Doomblade. He's got Aetherlink, Doomblade, Dissolve. It's Revelation, Detention Sphere. He's taking a look at everything here, making sure, okay, you got this, that, this.
A Fated Retribution as a super insurance policy.
Not so bad.
Yeah.
I think he's about to discard Supreme Verdict, which if I was chasing 3 days, okay, all right. You win. No more of this, please. One thing that Grace doesn't have, actually, oddly enough, is a ton of white mana. This discards 2 Detention Spheres and a Azorius Charm.
Yeah,
sure.
White mana is a curious bottleneck, actually, on Tannon right now, but I don't think it matters too much.
If I played against an opponent who discarded 2 Detention Spheres and Azorius Charm against me, I wave the white flag.
So you're saying instead of spending 3 mana to cast the Detention Sphere, you would rather discard it? Okay, well, that means I'm probably dead.
Fated Retribution has been placed onto the stack. That's going to kill a couple of things here. I love that card for what it's worth.
Yeah, it's something where you look at it at first blush and you say to yourself, oh, well, this is really expensive and doesn't seem terribly powerful. But as a singleton in decks like this, it's just another really powerful tool to have access to.
I love, that they just have this pretty cool 1-of to draw to that has a huge impact on the game. But, it's not something that you can play a ton of. It is very powerful, but 7 mana and 3 white mana that's a real cost. Looks like we're going to see Aetherlink join the party too.
It's definitely really easy to draw too many of that kind of effect.
Yeah.
But as a 1-of, it's great.
And hey, who knows? Maybe it's a block constructed all-star. Much like Aetherling was.
Yeah.
That was a good card during that Pro Tour. Here's a Gore Clan Rampager that Grace knew was coming from the Courser. He, of course, says that's fine. Looks like we're going to see a Doomblade, get that out of the way. Realistically, he doesn't have to Doomblade that. He can, play this little game with Aetherling things of that nature. I think maybe he's just trying to speed it up.
With the 2 Mutavaults in play, I think Tannon's just trying to turn it on here.
Yeah. I think he's saying, look, I want to get this game over with. My deck takes a long time to win. Let's get this show on the road, especially because the sideboarding games do take a little while.
Yeah.
So, activate. 2 Mutavaults, make everything unblockable. Attack here for 8 points of damage at least.
I like trying to speed up the game
I'm a fan.
with the blue-white control deck
I'm a
because
fan.
time is always a pressure.
Yeah, you don't got time to be messing around. You see a couple of pumps here. Big attack for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think Threet's going to go down to 4 as he chose not to block. Gray still has a Syncopate over there at the ready. Dissolve as well. Sitting pretty. And that's going to do it. So Tannon Gray's going to win game number 1 here with Blue Eye Control over Jason Threet playing Jund Monsters in what is a pretty difficult game 1 to win anyway.
Yeah, it feels like the Jund Monsters deck, it's really hard for it to beat both Supreme Verdict and Sphinx's Revelation in the same game. Feels like you can choose to beat one or the other by either deploying your threats slowly to beat Supreme Verdict or trying to run them out of the gym to beat Sphinx's Revelation. But if they have the wrong one that you're playing around, then it feels really bad for you. And if they draw both, like Tannon did that game, it also feels very hard to win.
I'm inclined to agree, my friend. You've got Jund Monster sideboard in front of you. Hit me.
An Anger of the Gods, a Xenagos the Reveler, 2 Lifebane Zombies, a Roark Thar, a Flesh Blood, 2 Golgari Charms, 2 Ultimate Prices, a Xenagos God of Revels, 3 Mistcutter Hydras, and a Sire of Insanity. I like the Sire, the Mistcutter Hydra, the additional copies, the additional Xenagos, both the Planeswalker and the God, the Roark Thar, and the 2 copies of Golgari Charm, both to fight over Supreme Verdict and Detention Sphere.
A lot of hits there.
A lot of hits. And he gets to take out some of his, more middling threats or removal spells that don't really work against blue-white control.
On Grace's side, we mentioned at the top how he's got Doomblades to make himself better against green-red monsters. It'll line up here as well because Threet does have access to Mistcutter Hydra as well as Stormbred Dragon and Doomblades, a clean answer for both of those cards. So you can expect those 3 Doomblades in his sideboard to come in. He's got a Singleton Notion Thief, a Revoke Resistance, a Blind Obedience. Love Blind Obedience in this matchup. We saw Adrian Sullivan use that to great effect last week playing against green red. Pithing Needle times 2, Fate of Retribution, another one in the sideboard. Could see that come in, along with 2 copies of Glare of Heresy, an opportunity to dispel, and 2 copies of Negate as well. So a lot of options.
So again, I'm deferring to your judgment here as you are the
Big mistake.
Jund Monsters expert.
Yeah.
So I understand you want to have cards like Mistcutter Hydra and Roark Thar because they're creatures and you reveal them to Domri. So all other things being equal, you want to be adding creatures to the sideboard. Why not Thoughtseize?
I feel like a lot of blue-white defects are redundant, and so Thoughtseizing them isn't the best way to go about trying to beat them. I think that you just want to present very, very difficult to answer questions across a wide spectrum, and the questions all require very different answers to deal with. I've always been the kind of person who likes to present very hard to ask questions, and if the opponent's answers line up appropriately, then they did it or whatever.
Sure.
And I think that with the different questions that you're answering, or the different questions that you're asking, with Sire of Insanity versus Roark Thar. I mean, those are 2 6-mana threats that basically in the game, but they're very different 6-mana threats that win the game. Rakdos' Return is a very proactive card, of course. Xenagos God of Revel is very proactive. I'm actually not the biggest fan of Mistcutter Hydra because even though, as you did mention, that's a card that you reveal to Domri and all this stuff. I feel like blue-white control decks are geared towards trying to beat that card.
Sure.
Either with Blind Obedience or a card like Celestial Flare or something of that nature, where I think that every blue-white control player, when they're building their deck, the night before, whenever they come to a tournament, they're saying, okay, I got to have the appropriate answer to Stormbreath Dragon and Mistcutter Hydra, haste threat that people are going to bring in against me. So I've never really liked Mistcutter Hydra against this particular strategy. I feel the same way about Mono Blue Devotion, too, where, it's a great card against Mono Blue for all the obvious reasons, but also at the same time, we've seen many Mono Blue Devotion players beat that card.
Oh, it's definitely not game over. You need to be supplementing it with other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the major reason that I ask about Thoughtseize is it feels like, to me, the best cards that you have in the matchup post-board are Sire of Insanity and Roark Thar. They're both basically counterspell right now or bust.
Sure.
The game basically ends. So when you have 2 threats that are demanding a counterspell, then Thoughtseize becomes a little more attractive, or some sort of duress effect, because you can, you take the 1 dissolve and then you clear the path. But I do definitely understand with Domri trying to lean on the side of just have them be creatures. They're, you had to be the aggressive deck in the matchup, and you want to be revealing to Domri. So I definitely understand the case against, but certainly when you're backing it up with Roark Thar and Sire of Insanity, that makes makes something like Thoughtseize or Duress pretty attractive to me in the abstract.
I do agree. I do agree. See both players shuffling up here for game number 2. Again, Tannon, Grace, Jason, Threet. Blue-White Control on Jund Monsters is our matchup here in round number 6. Don't forget as well, we've also got some players in the feature match doing really, really well. Tom Ross, I think, is the one I would say is leading the pack right now with his different take on Jund. Much more of a Jund mid-range type control deck that we saw last season do so well in the hands of Reed Duke and Owen Turtenwald and company. He's sitting at 5-0. You've got Justin Uppel playing a different take on Jund Monsters, just a few slight modifications on Kent Ketter's list from last week when he top-8'd. He's starting off at 5-0. Todd Anderson was 4-1 coming to this round, so we'll see how he did at the conclusion of this round as well. Some big names in attendance doing well.
And Tom's deck is pretty interesting to me, too, because it's really a throwback to Jund decks of last year. Of course, it's not Thragtusk, come after the fells, but the strategy is very similar of just trade, make sure that you have answers to a wide swath of cards, and then win with really durable threats. It's a lot of the same game plan.
You know, there's no Thragtusk this go around, but you know what? Good.
It does make games take a long time.
I need a little break from Thragtusk.
Yeah. Because you know what happens when someone casts a Thragtusk?
Go on.
It makes it very likely that they're going to have the time to cast a second Thragtusk.
Yeah.
Which then leads to the third threat. You know where this goes. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about.
Both players going to lay out their 7 cards. Threet will be on the play this go around here in game number 2. Got a couple of lands.
Looks like possibly too many lands.
Yeah, there's a lot of them over there.
Is that 6 lands Palakranos, I believe?
Potentially, as Grace is going to take a mulligan. Threet's happy with his keep right now. Grace is going to go down to 6 cards.
Yeah, a lot of this depends on the number of scry lands in Threet's hand. That, of course, can help, glue together a sketchy opening. But Palakranos is already among your worst threats against blue-white control. As again, as odd as that sounds, 4 mana, 5/5 with powers. How can this be bad? It's just you need immediacy against blue-white control. Because if you ever give them the breathing space to resolve a big revelation, the game ends. So the threats that you have to produce have to require immediate responses. They can't allow the player to say, okay, that resolves. I'll rev for 4, untap, and now incidentally deal with this thing.
Yeah.
They need to be all impacting the board that turn.
You don't want someone just to deal with your threat at their leisure when you're playing against blue-white.
I will Revelations for 4. I will untap and target it with Doomblade. It is your turn.
Yeah.
Those are the sequences that cause you to lose the game.
Yes.
So you need to be producing Stormbreath Dragon, Mistcutter Hydra, Roark Thar, Siren Sandy, things with resistance against answers and immediate impact.
Let's take a look at 6 cards, Mr. Grace, shall we? It's got at least Doomblade over there. Not sure how many lands it's got.
Or if he even has black mana.
Yeah. So Stomping Ground comes into play tapped. There's Temple of Enlightenment for Tannon. A great card to have when you're on a mulligan, or when you're not.
Just really good to have.
Just a really good Magic card. Yeah, we do see a mitt full of lands there for Jason. He's going to play a Stomping Ground past the turn back. You don't expect things to be too quick in the sideboarded games. There's a lot of posturing for position and things like that. This isn't a Flint of Boar, super aggressive Rakdos Cackler type deck.
Yeah. And it does actually make the counter spells really good in the post-board games in my mind.
Yes, they do.
Dissolves and Syncopates feel very good against Jund.
7 carries it. 3 will pass the turn back. Univault from Grace, pass it back. So a whole lot of nothing so far.
The lack of double blue is critical because the most common counterspell in these lists is Dissolve. So Syncopate and possibly, Negate could be in play, but Jason likely has a window to try to resolve something impactful.
Well, it looks like he's going to try to because Blood Crypt is coming into play untapped. So Threet's going to go down to 18. What's he going to try to resolve? Looks like he's just trying to play around Syncopate right now.
Yes.
So there's a Domri. And there's a Negate, as you mentioned. Threet, with nothing else to do, passes the turn back to Grace. Grace will take a draw. There's the Plains. And just pass it back. Again, the lack of double blue could be problematic here for Tannon.
Tannon has at least 1 Syncopate in hand, so he can probably defend himself for a little bit longer. But, of course, he does need to continue to make land drops and find double blue to really start moving on to the next phase of the game.
That's 4 mana. That's the Xenagos. Does Grace care? You see him take a look at his hand. He says, yeah, I care. I will cast Syncopate. X equals 2. Then it goes to Exile. So Planeswalker is not resolving. Blood Crypt going to come and play tap, pass it back. Grace will take a draw. Does he have a 5th land? He does, in the form of Temple of Deceit. More importantly, with Temple, also providing the black mana necessary for a Doomblade.
Yeah, that's about the best draw in Tannon's deck right now. Tannon is playing no Godless Shrines or Watery Graves. He's gluing this together all off of Scrylands. Is that correct? Okay.
Something that we have been seeing players do recently. You know, saw Splash for Dark Betrayal up in Vancouver, the Grand Prix that Alexander Hayne won, and now we see it here for Doomblade from Grace.
It feels a little bit different to me because the matchups where you want Dark Betrayal, you usually have time to find it because of the nature of the games. The games where you want Doomblade, you're often under the gun.
I need to find this and the black source.
Yeah, even if they had the same number of black cards, it feels like it would necessitate more black sources in Doomblade world than Dark Betrayal world.
Stormground comes into play untapped here for Threet, so looks like we're going to see something where he's going to try to play around Syncopate again. And there's a Pool of Chronos. Syncopate for 3 is not going to get it done, so Grace says, okay. Untap that Temple. Take a draw here for Tannon as we move into his first main phase. See if he's got a 6th land to play. He does. And there is Temple of Deceit. Deciding what he wants to do with the Scry. Looks like keep on top is good to go. Has to turn back. Threet will untap those 4 lands. Threatening a 5-point punch in the face here.
And this is where you can see the value of how Tannon's constructed his deck. In a lot of, for just straight blue-white, this would be a scenario where Tannon would just have to hope to not face down Stormbreath Dragons and Mistcutter Hydras. They would be really dangerous draws for Jason. Having Doomblade shores up that weakness so much.
See if he wants to use a Doomblade just yet.
Yeah, I think he has a Syncopate in hand, so he's debating about whether or not he wants to spend his mana Doomblading, potentially lowering his shields against Syncopate. So then there's the question of what cards would I want to Syncopate were Jason to cast them? Tannon would prefer to not take 5 if he doesn't have to, but if he wants to protect himself against a follow-up threat, he should just take the 5.
And using his life total as a resource here in this situation as well, as there is a Doomblade on Blue Chronos, so bye-bye after taking 5 from it. But now everything is safe for Tannon to untap.
And based on the way Tannon played that turn, if you're Jason, you can be almost positive there's a Syncopate in his hand.
Yeah. You mentioned that. Looks like Jason kept a hand that had a lot of lands, and he's got even more now. He's going to play this Overgrown Tomb untapped. He's going to go down to 14 to do so. I think this is a very, very, very large Mistcutter Hydra. And it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8.
I believe Tannon will target it with Doomblade.
If he's got another one, I think that's a good choice. That'll work too.
This is also totally reasonable.
Fated Retribution. We'll take care of that. So Carriated. That's got to go. So a little 2-for-1 action there. No Scry, of course.
Yeah.
But oftentimes the Scry is a little tacked on there. It doesn't happen too often. As Grace is going to untap, he'll take a draw. He's in a commanding position right now.
Yeah, and I wonder if Tannon did that turn just to get, in part because he wanted to get Sylvan Carriated out of play, to start going aggressive with Mutavaults.
Yeah.
He really doesn't have, he only has really the one Doomblade. He doesn't have a lot to defend himself with, so he may want to take a more aggressive pace of the match.
And Threet, to his credit, he's at 12 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's starting to take some damage here. There's a Courser. Take a look at the top card, Ultimate Price. A little surprising to see that after sideboard. One thing we do see blue-white players, they've been incorporating Archangel of Thune recently. So that's probably the reason that you see Ultimate Price. Doomblade going to take care of Courser. And now Grace, knowing what his opponent is going to be drawing, I wouldn't be surprised to see those 2 Mutavaults get in the red zone here.
Yeah, I think Tannon's going to try to get a little more aggressive here.
And that's exactly what you see. So an attack here for 4. It's going to put Threet down, I believe, to 9.
So gaining 1 off of the Courser is actually pretty important for Jason here, as it adds a turn to Tannon's clock.
Okay. Now there is the Ultimate Price that he draws from the Courser. Obviously should have been turned face down, but game state is all good to go here. So
not a big deal. We knew it was there, so it's not like anything that should not have happened did happen.
Pass the turn back, so Grace will take a draw. Mutavaults are coming again, puts you down to 5. Can't Ultimate Price those. There's an island past the turn back. Syncopate probably not going to counter very much the rest of this game. Looks like Threet may have finally drawn a spell. And he did. It's a Domri. Elevator going up. Let's see what he finds. It's a Stormbreath Dragon. And I think you should ignore everything I said about Syncopate countering a spell. Because it's about to do that. Yeah, can't Syncopate that one fast enough. He says Syncopate, exile that. Grace going to untap, he's going to draw. Probably thinks out Domri this turn, you think?
It depends when he draws. I mean, if he feels like he can beat any two draw steps from Jason, then you might as well go after him.
Oh, he's got Needle in the script. Yeah, okay, never mind.
That makes it much easier.
Yeah. And so he puts Threet down to 1. Threet draws a card. It's a Swamp to go along with Ultimate Price, and that's going to do it. Tannon Grace wins this match 2-0 over Jason Threet. Blue-White Control wins over Jund Monsters as Tannon flashes a smile to one of his friends over there. So congratulations to Tannon Grace. 5-1 Blue-White Control with a little bit of splash.
And just